Welcome back to Pound for Pound ATL.
It's Pound for Pound ATL.
What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another rendition of the Pound for Pound. Today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, a fun topic, something I've been wanting to talk about now for a little while, but the defense needed some videos, and they're going to need some more videos before it's all said and done. But I wanted to take just a little bit of a detour, and like I said, talk about something that's been on my mind for a little bit. But before we get into all that, thank y'all for the amazing support that y'all gave the last video I put out there talking about the defensive line rotation, and also appreciate the added support to the channel itself. It keeps growing, and it keeps growing because of y'all, and we very much appreciate it. If you're new to this channel, go ahead and like, subscribe. We encourage you to comment, whether it be here or find us on Twitter. You know, whichever way, we enjoy interacting with y'all. But now, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into it. What I want to talk about today, and you might have been able to tell by the thumbnail, is I want to talk about the running back stable and the tight end group that we have. What really got me to thinking about it was a couple weeks ago, probably another week or two ago by now, it came out from Dirk Koetter's interview about Todd Gurley that we didn't really know the health of Todd Gurley. And that got the Twitterverse, just set ablaze. That, oh man, we don't know like what his knee looks like and all this other stuff. And there's, there's a possibility that we don't. And I would imagine that there is some kind of language in his contract possibly to protect the team financial wise, whether, he ends up going down with a catastrophic injury or not. Or they could just be, okay with and willing to, sign over $6 million or whatnot. Because really, in the grand scheme of things, you signed him for 1 year, I think $6, maybe $7 million total. So it's not like it's that big of an investment. Now, speaking of that part of it, I really hope that you Bulldog fans and Falcons fans and just Todd Gurley fans in general realize that you probably only going to keep this guy for 1 year. Because if he comes in here and balls out like everybody wants him to, he's going to want $10+ million a year. He's going to want to be one of the highest paid running backs in the league. That's just how those people work, man. That's how the top elite, players work. And if he gets back to form, that's what he is. Like, the reason why he was willing to accept $6 million a year from us this year is because A, it gives him a chance to rebuild his image, and B, he was still getting paid $7 million from the Los Angeles Rams. So he's still one of the highest paid running backs in the league. And for a person such as in the percentage that Todd Gurley's in, that's what he's going to want to get paid. So if he comes in and balls out, there's a good possibility that he's playing somewhere else for a large chunk of money next year. So y'all better hope, in a sense, that the stable of running backs behind Todd Gurley really show y'all something this year, or we're going to be drafting a running back on, in the higher part of the draft next year. That's just, my opinion there. But thinking about that got me thinking about our infamous OC, Dirk Koetter, the one who doesn't like to run the ball. The one who never really has produced much of a run game. Now, in that same interview, he talked about putting more emphasis on the run game and all that good, coach speak that doesn't amount to much of anything, especially in the off season. But that got me thinking, how could they put more focus on the run game? I looked at a couple games from last season where we went over well over 100 yards rushing total in the game, and tried to figure out what he did there that allowed him to produce a respectable run game. Those 3 games was the New Orleans game, the second Carolina game, and then the Jacksonville game. All 3 of those games we went close to 150 yards. I think the New Orleans game we ran for 159 yards. So I've got some plays here that I want to show y'all that make me feel like we could potentially develop at least a respectable run game. And I think it has a lot to do more with how the tight ends play as much as it does how the running backs play. Because the one thing that I noticed when we had good runs and productive runs, it was done with multiple tight ends on the field, whether it was 2 tight ends or 3 tight ends. And there were times where you had Ty Sombrello report as a tight end, so it gave you an extra offensive lineman on the field. But needless to say, to produce a good run and good running game, Dirk Koetter needed to deploy multiple blockers, extra blockers. It wasn't really necessarily getting it done with just the offensive line. Now, that could be more indicative of the offensive line's play, but needless to say, when he brought in more tight ends, the runs were far more successful. So let's just go ahead and get into it. Now, talking about that first game against New Orleans, in New Orleans, this play here, I'm going to show you. This play is a nice, misdirection play. You have Hooper and Luke Stoker lined up on the left side of the formation. When the ball is snapped, everyone flows left, and Ryan flips it to Hill to the right for a nice game. Earlier in the game, they came out and showed this look and tried to run it over to the side that the tight ends were on. So it was a good way of showing that Dirk Koetter is trying to set up plays. That's something we kill him for, because we feel like he is very vanilla, very predictable, and he is quite a bit. But it was nice to see that in the second half of the season, maybe once he felt like the team was getting more comfortable, or he was getting more comfortable, you started to see a little bit more creativity out of him and a little bit more mixing up of his play design. On the second clip here, you see all 3 tight ends are on the field. Now, I bring this clip up because this happens about, I want to say, 20-something% of the offensive snaps had 3 tight ends. They went with a 13 personnel, 1 running back, 3 tight ends type. Okay, so this is one of those examples. All 3 tight ends are on the field, and as the ball is snapped, Graham comes across the formation. He pulls from the left, comes all the way across. He pulls from his right, going to the left, and blocks number 93 to spring Freeman. Now, this would have been a real nice run and a real nice gain had Christian Blake not committed a hold during this, but needless to say, it goes to show you that it was a real good play design, in my opinion. You had Stalker and Hooper blocking up guys, and then you had Graham coming all the way across to play as almost like a lead blocker there, which was interesting to see. And like I said, it produced a real nice gain, other than the fact that Christian Blake had a hold on there. Now, on to the next clip. On this clip here, Hooper starts off at the fullback position, but motions to the slot. Now, shortly after he motions, Stalker drops back and then motions over to the same side. So now they're overloading the right side of the formation. Let's see, and then all three of them there in that bunch trips formation to the right. You had Jones, Hooper, and Stalker. All 3 of them make a block. And that's what was key, because that's one of the most underrated part of, I know I'm talking about the running backs and the tight ends here, but that's probably one of the more underrated parts of Julio Jones's game. Something you'll hear somebody talk about from time to time, but he is truly an exceptional blocker. And that's something that I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for. Because without him making a block here, you don't spring Brian Hill for a real good gain, okay? So, all right, now we're moving on to the next clip. Here's another 3 tight end set here. You got Graham, whose number is 87, motions to the fullback spot. when the play starts, everyone's blocked up real good, real nice. But Graham, I guess this is like, an example of his inexperience. He is an undrafted tight end. But Graham fails to see Luke Kuechly in the hole there. And Kuechly, he comes basically unblocked because, and it doesn't happen a ton, but Alex Mack missed, getting anything on Kuechly. But even if he had missed Kuechly, had Graham read that formation a little bit better, he could have met Kuechly in the hole and given Olesen a chance. But Olesen, to his credit, sees that Kuechly is coming unblocked, or not unblocked, but barely blocked, and tries to cut it back. Well, when he tries to cut it back, Shaq Thompson is sitting right there waiting on him, because Shaq Thompson did come unblocked through the hole, which is fine. You're not going to block everybody, but had Graham picked up Kuechly, or at least, chipped him there, that play might have had a chance. But I didn't want to just show you nothing but successes. There was an example there where you had all three tight ends on the field. You had, blockers galore, but you still, missed the key block, and that allowed Shaq Thompson to come in unblocked on the backside of the play and stop Olesen for no gain. So hopefully that's something that they can show Jaeden Graham, and, that he can potentially learn and do better next time around. All right, moving right along. Now, I'm moving through these clips here, probably at a maybe too fast of a pace, I'm not sure. But I want to get through them so that we can then, talk a little bit more about how I think the new, Todd Gurley and Olesen and Brian Hill and all these guys are going to be able to hopefully perform here. This next clip, you got Hooper and Stoker. Now, keep in mind Hooper and Stoker, neither one of these guys are on the roster anymore. And we're going to talk about that here in a second. So Hooper and Stoker start out on the same side, giving an overloaded look. Then Stoker motions out to balance out the look, right? They had been running the ball out of this formation all game. So when Stoker moves over, it looked like they were probably going to try to run it that way, because Stoker is more of the blocking tight end. That's about his only job out there. The defense bites hard on the running back, whether it be looking for him to come out of the backfield, and Hooper is able to come out pretty much unblocked. I mean, he's got a guy over there, but he's giving him a lot of coverage, a lot of ground, so it's a super soft coverage, and it makes for an easy gain. Okay, the reason why I pull this play out is to show you that they're not only running out of these 2 tight end formations, 3 tight end formations, they're also throwing it. So Dirk Koetter is utilizing his tight ends, and I think that's why you saw them willing to give up the picks that they did for Hayden Hurst, because they didn't want much of a drop-off from Hooper as far as ability. I actually think you get more ability from Hayden Hurst, at least more athletic ability, with him over Hooper. So it's going to be interesting to see how quickly he can get assimilated to our plays and to our playbook. And there've already been reports of him driving up multiple times from Jacksonville to work out with Matt Ryan. So it's good to hear that they're already trying to get on the same page, especially with this lack of training camp that's going on right now with the, obviously the pandemic that's going on. It's got a lot of things messed up. But it's good to hear that those guys are getting some work in and being able to try to get on the same page and not lose much time. All right, next clip. Same type of formation here. This time it's Hooper that goes into motion and sells the, chip block on the linebacker, right? So he's selling the potential run, at least to the defense's eyes. Now, granted, both Freeman and Smith stay in the backfield for protection, but either way, he puts a chip on a linebacker, which causes the other linebacker to bite pretty hard and gives him pretty much a free release for a pretty big gain. Now, that right there is something that I really hope to see, maybe with the added speed of Hayden Hurst, that he can get bigger gains out of, out of these type of plays, which is what you're hoping for. He had first round talents for a reason, or first round attributes that made the vaunted Baltimore Ravens feel good about drafting him in the first round. That's something that we don't need to forget. He was picked there for a reason. All right, last play, last clip I'm going to show you. It's another misdirection play. Everyone blocks to the right, and they flip the ball to the left, and Freeman pretty much walks into the end zone. But again, that's due to the blocking abilities of one Julio Jones. If it wasn't for his block there, Freeman probably wouldn't be as untouched as he was. But it's that misdirection that I wanted you to really see. But these are giving you examples of how Dirk Koetter can manufacture a run game. And he manufactures a run game, or at least a successful run game, out of having heavy tight ends play, like heavy tight end sets. I saw a lot of 3 tight ends, a ton of 12 personnel with 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and not an infrequent amount, but a decent amount of 22 personnel with fullback in there and the 2 tight ends. One of the things that I saw quite a bit was them motioning the tight ends into a fullback position. So it'll be really interesting to see if Khari Lee, the tight end that we picked up from the Houston Roughnecks, the XFL team, if he's going to be able to come in and produce at the level that Stoker produced at. Now, the first part of the year, Stoker looked like, man, I can remember, y'all can probably go back to live streams and find me trashing Luke Stoker. But there towards the end, he finally got into a rhythm and was making some decent blocks, and at least wasn't being liable, or a liability rather. But the team must have not necessarily liked what the end product was, because they went out and signed Khari Lee out of the XFL that has more of a reputation of being a blocking tight end. So I think he's going to take over your snaps there at what Luke Stoker put out on the field. And I mean, he was on the field more than the fullback was. So kind of keep that in mind. And, see if they bring in, another tight end. I think even, if I'm not mistaken, Toy Lolo's still out there on the free agent market. So that's a tight end that they at least have some familiarity with and may consider bringing back. Now, I could be wrong on that. I'm not 100% sure. Right now, the tight end group is really interesting, because I think they're going to have as a major effect on whether this run game gets going. Now, I know Hayden Hurst did a good bit of blocking up there in Baltimore in their run-heavy scheme, so I'm not necessarily worried so much about his blocking ability, but I am really interested to see if Jaeden Graham has upped his blocking ability in the offseason, and how well Khari Lee gets acclimated to what we're doing, because I think he's going to play a bigger role than what we originally thought. Unless they bring somebody in, obviously there's plenty of time for them to bring in another blocking tight end if they don't actually like what they see when they finally get on the field with during training camp, which hopefully will be starting up soon. It seems like a lot of states are starting to reopen for sports activities and stuff like that. So it'd be really interesting to see if they get training camp going. As far as the running backs go, I think you're going to get, depending on which version of Todd Gurley you get, I think you're going to get an upgrade from Freeman, at least in the, explosiveness, I guess you could say, because Freeman was definitely not a burner, and Freeman would make you miss in the backfield, but he didn't really run with the type of power that was needed. So I think the 1-2 punch of Brian Hill and Todd Gurley, well, it would be Todd Gurley and Brian Hill, to make sure we state it right. I believe that could be a very potent 1-2 punch, depending on how Dirk Koetter wants to deploy them. All this hinges on Dirk Koetter, and generally speaking, if the run game isn't working early, he's quick to abandon it, and he's quick to go to just all-out passing. So it'll be interesting to see how this run game manifests, but I believe what they started deploying in the second half of the season with the heavy tight end set could very well be the answer to the run game, especially with an inexperienced offensive line. Now, granted, they're going to have more experience this year than they did last year, but it's still not a ton of experience. So having multiple blockers out there ensures that you should be able to open up some holes for Todd Gurley, Brian Hill, Ito Smith, and Quadre Olison, because I really think that Brian Hill cements himself as a running back number 2 this year. Ito just doesn't seem like he can stay healthy. And I think Quadre Olison is going to be your short yardage back and your goal line back. I mean, he's your bigger back. He runs with a lot of power. And unless he, just blows everybody away, I believe that's going to be his role for this team, at least this year. Now, he may have a chance to expand it depending on what Todd Gurley does after this season's over with. But I think as it stands right now, it's going to be Quadre Olison as your third back and a 1-2 punch of Todd Gurley and Brian Hill. But that's what I have for you. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I hope y'all enjoyed this little bit of a video chat there, a little bit of a film breakdown type video. As always, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Grim1128. That's GRIMM1128. And Toby D is at TobyD1991. Like, subscribe, comment, all that good fun stuff. We enjoy y'all's interactions. And again, we appreciate all the love and support that y'all have shown us. It has just been unreal. And we thank y'all. And hopefully we can see y'all maybe at like a military day if they do it down at the Benz. But anyway, as always, Falcons fans, rise up.